Good day everyone, so let's get straight into today's video. One of the things that I don't like that Hoyo is doing with the new characters that they're selling us is that they're giving them too many features outside of combat. This is something I complained about in my recent video with Nouvellette, and today I really want to speak about or talk about what's going to happen when Hoyo takes this feature creep to the extreme. Now this to me is a very big problem because with new units coming out, they're obviously getting more and more relevance outside of combat and for the same price that you would have had to pay for your old units. This to me is just unacceptable. Either A, rework the old units, or B, give us other game modes or ways of making your new units valuable. This is the crux of my argument. So let's take a look at someone like Nouvellette. Basically, if you have him, you can traverse on the open water. There's no need to swap to Ayaka, there's no need to waste Kokomi's elemental burst, just a quick Nouvellette, and there you go. I can easily now get this Hydroculus. This is exactly what the problem is. It's blatant feature creep. Now you might say, well, what's the harm in all of this? What's the problem if he is able to just do this? Well, unfortunately, Genshin Impact was always a game where, let's say you drowned, there was an associated penalty. You lost your entire team's elemental burst, you lost whatever exploration progress you were making, and you lost a bit of health. So this was always how the game was designed from the beginning. There is an associated cost with everything. If a unit has some sort of utility, then obviously there must be an appropriate downside to this. Now, a lot of people might say, but look, something like walking on the overworld water, I mean, we've got Ayaka that can do it, and Wanderer can obviously do it, but even in the cases of Ayaka and Wanderer, there are still drawbacks to doing this. So for Nouvellette, the only drawback is obviously distance before he runs out, but for Ayaka and for Wanderer and so on, you have a stamina bar. It's not like these characters can infinitely walk or traverse on the water. You still have to manage it. There is still an associated cost. I still have to stop. I have to put up the icicle, and as you can see, now I have to carefully wait because if my stamina runs out, guess what? I'm going to be penalized. And it really would not surprise me if Hoyo would come into the future and they release a character that can just walk on water in all direction permanently with 100% uptime. This to me would be an example of egregious feature creep precisely because the game was never intended or designed in this way. Hoyo said in their latest live stream they want to keep the old flavor of how the game was, they're just simplifying it for new players, but unfortunately if you introduce this type of mobility creep, it is problematic. Now take another example. Nouvellette, like most Fontaine characters, has an Archie alignment. So you can see here, because he's OC aligned, he can't do anything to solve the puzzle here. So I have to now take my time, I have to now swap to the appropriate character, or I have to get that OC block or whatever that was up there. This is very irritating because very often you don't want to play with a character like this. You want to play with the characters you like. So now imagine Hoyo releases a character that not only walks on the water infinitely, but that can solve either OCR or like Numa puzzles. That would be hilariously broken, and I can promise you, don't think Hoyo won't do it. If they can get an additional bit of money for it, they'll 100% go for it. And obviously Fontaine characters being Fontaine means that they can obviously get an instant dive out of the water. Now a lot of people don't place any value on this, but once again it is an additional feature that's being given that's not being given to all the characters. But why stop at that? Why not just release a character that can walk on water, that can solve any Archie or whatever Pneumosia puzzle, and also have an ability to attack faster underwater? So you can see here, I attack with Kokomi and it takes a while, it takes 2 seconds. Now imagine there's a Fontaine character that does all of that, but at a much faster pace. So let's say every 4 seconds they can launch an attack. That would be an example of what I'm trying to get at. Now, a lot of people might say, well, so what? What if Hoyo releases a character that can infinitely walk on water? It's not going to be the world's worst thing, but here's the thing. Anytime that you get feature creep that happens in the game, you're in essence devaluing the player experience, especially for your older player base. When we started Genshin Impact, we were limited because there was only 120 resin. You could only walk so far before running out of stamina. There was no Sayu, there was no Kazuha Yelon. A lot of us had to play the game in a very restricted manner. And what's now happening is that because we've obviously cleared the game out, we now have new players coming in that have all of the advantages that we don't have. And all that Hoyo is doing is that they're just putting it behind a little gacha system. Think about it. If a new player started off with Yelan, the progress that they can make would be significantly faster. And I know a lot of people might say, but yeah, they wouldn't have the total amount of primo gems and so on. But to that I'll say it doesn't matter, because it just means that they know what are better units to pull for than what a lot of us pulled for. For instance, if I had known that Eula would be in the state that she's in right now, I would have never C6'd the character. That's literally how it goes. A new player can comfortably avoid Eula because of the power of hindsight. And the other thing is, new players don't have the 4 stars at C6, which means they can get a lot more value on their accounts than the rest of us, that when we get another 4-star unit, we basically just get an extra free pull. We don't really get any true account value. This is my problem. Since the beginning of the game, when we played, we had a lot of artificial restrictions. In fact, the game was designed from the ground up to gatekeep your progression unless you were willing to pay for stuff like resin and so on. And now a lot of new players, which is the big focus of what Hoyo wants, are going to get these units that have all of these advantages, and it will just make their journey so much better than what we've had. And unfortunately, this balance is really irritating, because it then hints to us as players that why should I pull for something like Resley that's got his Numa or whatever, I think OCO alignment on his elemental burst, when pulling for Nuvalet is just so much more logical. Nuvalet's got it on his skill, not on his burst. Nuvalet can swim faster underwater because it's his passive. Poor old Resley, the only thing that he can do is he can give you, you know, a 10% chance to double the product when you craft weapons or something like that. You give one character outrageous utility to float over world and to solve puzzles quicker and all of these advantages, and you'll give another character none of these advantages. The contrast between the two characters is like night and day in terms of overall utility, and yet both of them cost the same price. It still costs you just as much to get the one as it would to get the other, which means that relatively speaking, someone like Resley, an upcoming character, is going to be far more expensive than someone like Nuvalet, because he provides you less than Nuvalet. And unfortunately, the other element to this is that characters like Nuvalet are just going to get a more shine when it comes to the story. It's the same with the Archons. You gain far more story, far more lore, far more guaranteed involvement into future events. And that is just what's so irritating. I'm sitting here and I'm a Kokomi main, and I've barely gotten anything from Hoyo since her release. And then there are other characters, for instance, like Klee, that's just like, if there's every second event, there's a Klee inside that event. It's just crazy how Hoyo treats their characters. But nonetheless, certain characters like your Archons or your Hydro Sovereign that you've now got here in Nuvalet gain all of these advantages, lore advantages, gameplay wise advantages, and yet he still costs the exact same amount. And now there is even the threat that someone like Nuvalet here that just died in the background might even be seen as comparatively weaker to potentially new characters that can do what he does, but just in a bit of a better sense. So like I said, Nuvalet can walk on water, but there might come a character that can do so permanently. Nuvalet's got on his E ability, he's got the Osea, whatever. There's another character that can have Numa and Osea. Nuvalet can obviously go underwater. There's another character that will also inevitably have a far more useful ability underwater, because you can just use Fremne or whatever to stack some of the other underwater exploration effects. It's like, if you really think about it, Hoyo is treating these characters like a bunch of commodities, and they want certain characters to sell. That is why some of these characters are just objectively better when it comes to value. And now I know this excludes stuff like subjective value and how well you resonate with a character, and yeah, I get it. But at the end of the day, when it comes to what you as a consumer are in essence paying for, whether it's with your time as an F2P or whether you're swiping the credit card, the fact that the game is so egregiously power creeping and feature creeping is not okay to me, and it's just going to get worse. I can guarantee you in the future it's just going to be worse and worse and worse. Well, at least Ayaka is not cannot drown anymore in Fontaine, so I mean, on the bright side, that is at least a positive. So thank goodness for Fontaine made Ayaka a bit more stronger. In any case, I'm a bit upset with a couple of things, so I'm just gonna dash off in the background here of my Kokomi. Thank you so much for watching, and see you again. Cheers.